Ask most people what animal they fear most in Yellowstone and Wyoming's high country, and you will hear the same handful of answers over and over. A grizzly bear rising up out of the willows along a river bottom, a wolf pack moving through timber at dusk, a mountain lion watching from a rock ledge somewhere above a hiking trail. Those fears are not irrational. Every one of those animals is genuinely capable of killing a person, and every one of them has, somewhere in the region's history, done exactly that. But fear and actual body count in Wyoming do not line up nearly as closely as most people assume, and the animal that has quietly killed more people in this landscape than any of the ones tourists photograph from the safety of a car window is not a predator anyone pictures when they picture danger at all. Ask that same question in Jackson Hole, in Cody, in the ranch country stretching east toward the Bighorns, and you will hear the list get longer without ever getting more accurate. A bison charging a tourist who wandered too close for a photograph, a rattlesnake coiled on sun-warmed rimrock outside the park boundary. The fear is consistent across the whole region, and so is the gap between that fear and what the record actually shows. Here are 10 animals that have taken human lives in and around Yellowstone and the greater Wyoming high country, counting down. And the one sitting at the top will not be the one you expect. If a story like this one is worth your time, subscribing costs nothing and keeps these overlooked patterns coming to you first. Number 10 is the grizzly bear, the animal most visitors are primed to fear before they ever step out of the car. Grizzlies persist through the Yellowstone ecosystem in genuinely healthy numbers now, decades after near collapse, spread across the park's interior, the Bridger-Teton backcountry, and the drainages north toward Cook City. Confirmed fatal attacks remain exceptionally rare, given how many people hike, camp, and work in bear country every single season. Rangers who have spent entire careers responding to bear activity will tell you the vast majority of their calls involve a bear breaking into a cooler, not a bear attacking a person. Backcountry permits across the Teton Wilderness and the Shoshone National Forest require bear canisters precisely because that mismatch between fear and behavior is well understood by the people who manage this land, even if it never quite reaches the visitors driving through with a camera on the dashboard. The fear this animal generates is completely out of proportion to the actual risk, and that gap between reputation and reality is exactly the pattern this whole list is going to keep tracing. Number 9 is the gray wolf, reintroduced to Yellowstone in the 1990s and now one of the most politically charged animals in the entire region. Ranchers in Park County and Fremont County have real documented grievances about wolves killing livestock, and that conflict is not manufactured, but confirmed fatal wolf attacks on humans in the modern Wyoming record are close to non-existent. Wolves generally avoid people with the same consistency grizzlies do, keeping to elk herds and tree line rather than trailheads and campgrounds. And the packs that draw the most attention from wildlife watchers in the Lamar Valley are, by and large, the same packs that have never so much as approached an occupied campsite. The animal that dominates local news coverage and state legislature debates almost never appears in the medical examiner's actual count, which tells you something about which conversations get the airtime and which ones do not. Number 8 is the mountain lion, a cat that moves through the Absaroka and Wind River ranges with a level of secrecy that keeps most wildlife biologists from ever confirming a direct sighting despite years of tracking sign across the same terrain. Confirmed fatal attacks in Wyoming are rare enough that a single incident makes statewide news for weeks. The animal is real, the danger is real, and the actual toll remains a fraction of what the reputation would suggest, precisely because an ambush predator built around never being seen is, by design, an animal most people will go their entire lives without meaningfully encountering. Number 7 is the black widow spider, established across ranch outbuildings, woodpiles, and equipment sheds throughout Wyoming's lower elevations. This is an animal people in agricultural country encounter constantly, tucked into the undisturbed corners of a barn or a stack of hay bales gone unmoved for a season. The bites are treated seriously by anyone who has actually had one, and the stories circulate the way they do everywhere else in the country. Confirmed deaths from black widow bites in the modern era remain rare, largely because the anti-venom and supportive treatment available at rural Wyoming hospitals has closed most of the gap that used to exist between a serious bite and a fatal one. Number 6 is the prairie rattlesnake, the venomous species most likely to be encountered on the lower elevation trails and rimrock outside the park itself, since the cooler, high-elevation terrain inside Yellowstone proper keeps most snake activity to the margins. Bites are taken seriously and treated aggressively at hospitals in Cody, Jackson, and Cheyenne, and confirmed snakebite deaths in Wyoming remain a small fraction of the total incidents reported each summer. Locals who spend time on the sagebrush flats know exactly where the rattlesnakes den and adjust their routes accordingly. The same quiet, practiced caution you see anywhere venomous snakes and working land overlap. Number 5 is the moose, an animal almost nobody outside the region thinks to place anywhere near a list like this, because moose read as slow, ungainly, and harmless right up until one is standing between a hiker and a trailhead. Moose sightings around Jackson Hole, the Tetons, and the timbered river corridors near Yellowstone have been climbing for years as animals push into areas with more human foot traffic, and confrontations, particularly involving cows with calves in late spring, are becoming a real and growing concern for anyone walking a dog off-leash near willow bottoms. Moose-related injuries are documented every season, occasionally serious, and the trend line here points in a direction most of the animals ranked above it on this list do not share, an upward one, worth watching even if the current toll has not yet caught up to the reputation this animal is quietly earning. Wildlife officials in Teton County field more moose-related complaints during calving season than they do complaints about any predator on this list, a detail that rarely makes it into the conversation because a moose standing in someone's front yard simply does not read as a wildlife emergency the way a bear does. If you have had a close call with any animal on this list, or one that should have made the cut and did not, put it and your county or your park unit below. People living alongside this terrain day to day usually have a better read on the real risk than any statistic pulled from a database ever could. Number 4 is the ELK, an animal tourists photograph from pullouts along the Grand Loop Road without ever considering it a threat. Elk vehicle collisions on the highways in and around Yellowstone and the Bighorn Basin account for a steady, unglamorous toll every fall and winter, spiking hard during the rut when bulls are distracted and herds cross roads in the dark without warning. Separately, elk during the September rut have injured hikers and hunters who wandered too close to a bugling bull defending territory, a confrontation almost nobody plans for because the animal spends the rest of the year looking like scenery. Neither category makes headlines the way a bear encounter does, which is exactly why this entry sits as high as it does. Wyoming game and fish tracks wildlife vehicle collisions across the state's major highway corridors, and elk consistently rank among the animals most frequently involved, a pattern most drivers passing through on their way to the park entrance have no reason to know until they are the ones braking hard on a dark stretch of highway outside Dubois or Cody. Number 3 is livestock, cattle and horses specifically, animals almost nobody in Wyoming thinks to include on a list like this because they live on ranches instead of in the wild, tended and worked by the very people they occasionally injure or kill. Large animal handling remains one of the more dangerous routine activities in rural Wyoming life. Kicks, trampling, and crush injuries during everyday ranch work, loading a trailer, working a chute, moving a herd through a narrow gate account for a steady toll that rarely makes statewide news because it happens quietly, one incident at a time, on private land far from any headline or camera. The animals themselves are not considered dangerous in any cultural sense, which is exactly why this category sits as high as it does on this list. An entire class of confirmed fatalities filed under ranch accident rather than animal danger at all. Ranch families across Sublette and Fremont County will tell you the injuries that actually shape a working life out here rarely come from anything wild. They come from the animals fed by hand every morning, the ones treated as trusted partners rather than any kind of threat. Number 2 is the domestic dog, and this is where the list starts to genuinely unsettle people. because the animal responsible for more confirmed fatal attacks in Wyoming than any wild predator on this list is also the animal most Wyomingites keep in their own home, riding in the truck cab or waiting by the door every evening. The vast majority of pet dogs pose no meaningful risk to anyone, and it would be both inaccurate and unfair to suggest otherwise. But fatal dog attacks do occur in the state, disproportionately involving unsupervised interactions with young children or encounters with unfamiliar dogs outside a controlled setting. And the sheer number of dogs living in close daily contact with people, on ranches, in town, in every ATV and truck bed across the state, far outweighs every wild species on this list combined. This is an animal almost nobody frames as dangerous precisely because framing it that way runs against how deeply dogs are woven into Wyoming ranch and family life. Which brings this list to number 1. And it is not a predator, not anything with claws or fangs or the kind of silhouette that shows up in a nightmare on a mountain trail. It is the tick, specifically the Rocky Mountain wood tick found through the sagebrush and grass understory across Wyoming's mid-elevations. The exact terrain most hikers walk through without a second thought on the approach to a trailhead long before they reach anywhere a grizzly or a wolf might actually be. The mechanism here is almost entirely about how easily this animal is dismissed. A tick bite itself is nearly painless, often unnoticed for hours, sometimes for days, tucked into a hairline or a sock cuff where nobody thinks to check. For the vast majority of people who get bitten, nothing happens beyond a small welt that fades within a week. But the Rocky Mountain wood tick is a documented carrier of Rocky Mountain spotted fever, a bacterial infection that can escalate quickly if it goes unrecognized, along with tick paralysis, a rarer but genuinely serious condition caused by a neurotoxin in the tick's saliva that can shut down muscle function, including the muscles that control breathing, before anyone realizes a tick is even involved. Tick paralysis reverses almost immediately once the tick is found and removed, which makes it one of the strangest entries on this entire list. An animal capable of causing a medical emergency and also capable of being defeated by nothing more than a careful check at the end of a hike. Rocky Mountain spotted fever, by contrast, does not resolve on its own. Left unrecognized and untreated, the infection can progress from a mild headache and fever into something far more serious within a matter of days, which is precisely why public health officials in Wyoming and across the broader Rocky Mountain region continue to treat tick awareness as a genuine seasonal priority rather than a minor inconvenience, even though almost nobody outside that world hears about it. Because these insects are everywhere, in tall grass along trailheads, in sagebrush flats, on the exact stretch of ground between a parking lot and the wilderness boundary where nobody is thinking about wildlife danger yet, and because most people have no idea they carry a tick until they find one attached that evening, the sheer frequency of exposure across an entire hiking season quietly outpaces every other animal on this list. Bear, wolf, lion, moose, dog, all of it combined. That is the twist worth sitting with at the top of this list. Every animal ranked above this one gets treated culturally as some level of genuine threat, something you watch for, something you respect, something rangers put on warning signs at every trailhead in the park. The tick gets brushed off a pant leg without a second glance. The bite that goes unnoticed on the drive home gets treated as an itch instead of a bite, and that complete absence of fear, that total normalization of an insect most hikers pick up without ever realizing it, is exactly what allows it to quietly outkill every animal Wyomingites actually spend their energy being afraid of. Every animal on this list is real, documented, and capable of taking a human life, and none of them deserve to be dismissed just because the numbers land the way they do. The grizzly earned its reputation honestly, even if it rarely uses it. The wolf carries a political weight in this state that has nothing to do with its actual body count. But if this list proves anything, it is that the animals people fear most in Yellowstone country, and the animals actually responsible for the most confirmed deaths, are more often than not two completely different lists. and the gap between them is wide enough to fit an entire trailhead parking lot full of hikers who checked for bears and never once checked for ticks. If you want more of these overlooked Wyoming and Yellowstone patterns brought into the light, subscribe and stay close, because the next animal on a list like this might already be riding home with you in the cuff of your sock, without anyone giving it a second thought.